many people in the world who really don't understand. Freedom has many difficulties, but we have never had to put a wall up to keep our people in. Freedom is indivisible. And when one man is enslaved, all are not free.
Modern war has become a struggle for men's minds as well as for their bodies. Today we face an enemy who spends enormous sums of money and manpower all over the globe in an attempt to subvert the thinking of the people of the free world, confuse, divide, and ultimately to subjugate.
It is a contest unlike any we have ever faced in our history as a nation.
Contest for the minds and hearts of people around the world, all people.
When power corrupts, poetry cleanses. We must never forget that art is not a form of propaganda. It is a form of truth.
Psychologists find that control of emotions can be gained by understanding the stimulus-response pattern. Many everyday things become associated with these primary stimuli, partly by a process called conditioning.
It's a strange, shadowy world. The doctored photograph, the misquotation, the insinuation, and the lie.
I think of fire in connection with emotion. Cause, effect.
You've got to get a hold of yourself.
We have to work together. You have to help.
We'll light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world.
Yes, in modern warfare, our military leaders are finding that words and ideas are highly effective weapons.
Bonjour. Hello.
Bonjour. You got me chewing on my apple.
Welcome, Adam. Hey, Derek. This is a first for Dissolving the Divide, our first live stream. So super exciting.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel honored.
Yeah, glad to have you here.
Likewise to have you here. Yeah, brother. And yeah, we're not going to cut to the normal formalities of this intro. You know yourself better than us, but yeah, just real quick, we've been in touch for quite some years, talking about a lot of stuff. You've been more like behind the scenes, in regards to like, truth communities and whatever have you and stuff. And yeah, your uniqueness of, experiences and previous employment and all that jazz, and having certain specialties and certain operations, which is going to lead to today's conversations in regards to, a lot of psychological warfare being played out on the populace in so many different ways and flavors.
All the world's a stage.
Yeah, exactly. And this is nothing new, but everyone keeps falling for these things on so many different levels, even at the higher enlightened levels, because this is so insidious, if you will, the subversions and all that. So yeah, Adam Alexander, how you doing, brother?
Good, man.
Broadcast.
I'm classified.
Yeah, sorry.
Right. No, it's Burlington, Kentucky. I'm a Southern boy, so.
Ah, cool.
Yeah.
I converted my basement into a studio.
Awesome. So before you get into the meat of this, just in like a sentence, what is your qualification, where you got the inside scoop on what you're going to share today?
Well, so when I was younger, I as most of my decisions when I was young were pretty, you know, uh, just kind of random. And one day I decided I was going to go and do the thing there. And back in 1999, and I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of detail, but essentially what happened is that I was attached to a special operations unit. And the special operations umbrella covers a whole host of different sort of subgroups, psyop being one of them. And SF, you've heard of Special Forces, Rangers, 160 SOAR. That's the guys that fly around in the black helicopters that you may have heard of. Anyway, so civil affairs, psyop, there's intelligence, military intelligence does not fall under that category. But so 160 SOAR, Rangers, SF, psyop, civil affairs. So I found my way into Special Operations Battalion, and I was fast tracked into the psychological warfare training program, which is called 37 Foxtrot. And all the military nomenclature, the military is very standardized. It's, everything has 3 different ways to say it. So 37 Foxtrot. I've heard that they're trying to change the name of this to make it more user friendly to the, because the term psyop now has become such a loaded term, like most, and that in and of itself is a psyop, because everyone uses it in a certain way and they don't use it in the right way. They think they know what a psyop. Anything happens, a basic conspiracy, like, it's a psyop. No, not necessarily. But anyway, so I spent time. I was sent down to. I didn't do my training at Bragg, which is where most people do. I actually received my training at Fort Knox, and that was an interesting experience. Out in the field, doing night land nav on that hilly land that they have there, and found out that there's probably no gold there. So that was interesting. But yeah, I mean, the psyop program, I qualified for it. I had all the right indicators of, you have to, generally speaking, when you go into military, you have to, let me get a drink. My mouth's real dry, sorry. You take a test. I think everybody in the United States, when they're in high school, were you forced to take that, Derek? I don't know. The ASVAB or?
I forget.
Well, I think, well, and when I was a kid, I took it as a joke. I drew a surfboard on the. I remember, because I'm like, I was a rebellious kid, man. I was like, F this. There's no way. I mean, I was into like that kind of stuff. Anyway, so to get back to what I said, I received the training. I had all the correct physical. Since it's special operations, you have to have a higher than average physical capability. You have to have a certain type of intelligence, a very particular type of intelligence, which, you have to have, your metrics have to fit it. It's a very outside of the box type of thing. And so I got involved with that, and I learned all about that. Whatever I did or didn't do, I'm not going to talk about, but I basically, and the thing about military psyop is that it's very formulaic. It's very boring, actually. What's interesting is the missions and the stories that, where people get, I have a whole host of those to go into. But so my background basically was that I had a security clearance, secret level. They checked. I mean, they went back. They knew things about me I didn't know. A book of paperwork. I'm trying to think back. I was discharged in 2007, so 1999 it's been a while. But yeah, I mean, I just I received a foundation in what psyop is, and that's where the term comes from. Psyop, psychological operations. So whenever someone uses that term, excuse me, that's what it is. And I'll get into this my notes later, and I'll tell you kind of where it kind of came from. But that's basically in a nutshell. And I did that. I just kind of just did that for a while, and then just went on to some other things, and that's that. And what's followed me all throughout. Oh, well, I've always been somebody that's thought outside the box. I've never trusted authority, which is kind of an odd thing to say. I've always been a rebellious individual. I've always, always respectful in some ways, if it was deserved. But I mean, I was a hellion in school. I mean, I have the gift of gab, so I can think on my feet and I can speak really quickly. And then when I get angry, I speak really, really quickly. And the teachers, I had a handful of teachers that, I got along with, probably one or two, and art teachers. So, finding myself in that position was it was one of those, if I got an idea to do something, I was just like, yeah, I just did it one day. And that's what happened. So that's my background. And then fast forward to not too long ago. Oh, I get sidetracked a little bit. Let me backtrack. I've always been somebody that's read and studied about geopolitics, propaganda. I mean, I remember reading Noam Chomsky when I was in 10th grade. And so I graduated in 96. Nobody was reading Chomsky back then. It was like Rage Against the Machine came out. Before that, I was into Public Enemy. I was like one of the only white kids, because I grew up in pretty much a primarily white area. I mean, up until I lived in Florida, but I was rocking out Public Enemy t-shirts, and I was into that whole, there was something about it that clicked with me, because I knew there was truth there. Excuse me. So I've always been someone that's been very, very passionate about the truth and very defiant against people who try to say otherwise, especially when it comes to, using, especially when it comes to, I've always felt like sort of a sheepdog. So I've always had this internal sort of drive to protect or to, help those that maybe are unable to properly, I've always, I guess the best word would be sort of the underdog. I've always been that sheepdog character. And that just led me to all of my research and reading. I mean, I was reading Bernays at a pretty early age. And then fast forward to not too long ago, I got hooked up with Richard Grove over at Grand Theft World. And of course, you guys know him. He's, I would recommend Autonomy to everybody too, by the way. But go check out Richard Grove. But he verbatim can pull information from his head, and some of the stuff that he was talking about, it all really kind of clicked. And it was over a period of time, and I would always go from one teacher to another, or I'd go from, it's always been a progression. It's always been much of what I learned. I was in the punk scene, the hip hop scene, the skateboard scene, it was all kind of one thing when I was a kid. We Gen X, we didn't have all these 20 different, versions of whatever.
So Adam, what is a psyop? What is the proper definition?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because it's right here. And so I'm going to pull, and just let me say from the outset, this is a monumental topic. This is we're talking about library full of books topic. This is a master's class. I mean, so when I started to dive back into, I'm going to get to your question here in a minute, Leslie, but I just want to say from the outset that when I started to put together my notes and I started to dive back into, some of the stuff I learned, I was realizing that much of what I learned, it's changed so much. And what we did on a military strategic level, it's kind of it's a far different story than what we're seeing now, where they're kind of turning these things onto civilian populations and domestic populations. So I started to realize that, man, this is you know, I haven't touched this for a long time, and there's so much new information, and it's all merging into cyber warfare. But to answer your question, proper definition: PSYOP refers to the planned operations aimed at influencing the emotions, motives, reasoning, and ultimately the behavior of target audiences. So it's marketing, it's advertising, it's the flip coin of you know, Bernays. We're going to get into him. I have some quotes from him, but hearts and minds, and two simple words. In fact, my insignia back at the PSYOP unit was hearts, minds, deeds. So, you know, that's in a nutshell: deception, influence in minds and hearts and minds, emotions, cognitive and emotional. Absolutely.
Right.
And essentially, though, I mean, I was thinking about this because I was just, you know, I was sitting in piles of notes, and I'm like, man, it's really just deception. It's really just, that's all it is. And it's just, there's 1,000 different ways to spin it, you know? And so what I want to do is make sure that I leave people with, I wanted to do this properly. So I want people to have and Derek and I talked about this because we were talking about a podcast on this, because I was like, man, one of the things I learned from Richard Grove was, you know, he promotes the Trivium. And I'd never heard the Trivium. Like, you know, I grew up in the country, but I didn't hear about no classical information or classical education. And I realized it was a scientific method, really. And but he talked about the grammar of, you know, that's the primary step in the Trivium. In order to have the right output, you have to have the right input. So what Derek and I talked about is like, look, man, you know, when you understand fallacy, for example, a lie, all the ways that, you know, lies manifest, you're pretty good at spotting lies, because you're like, hey, or like, let's say you have a car and there's this weird thing that happens where you see that car driving down the road all the time. Like, oh, you spot it. Like, say you have I don't know, let's say you have a Ferrari. You look like a Ferrari type of person to me. Well, you're going to drive down the road and you're going to spot that car. It's going to be the same color. So this is what I want to leave people with. I want to give them a good foundation of terminology, the grammar, and then they can proceed on with, you know, the remainder of the Trivium process, which is grammar, rhetoric, and logic. And so, in order to have the right output, which means understanding, you have to have the right input. And Derek and I was like, hey, man, there's all these terms. We were just talking about terms and like methods and techniques and concepts. Like, you know, people don't know, like, you would classify QAnon as a modified limited hangout. That's what it's called. And I'm like, all these terms exist. They were created to explain these different techniques. And it's like, you know, it's like the fact that they even exist, like the fact that something like that even exists means that somebody was sitting around thinking about this, like modified limited hangout. What is that? That's when we release bits and bits and bits of information that's sprinkled with truth. And then, but we do that to kind of deceive in a way where we're not revealing the whole truth. We're just little bits at a time, you know. Astroturfing, you've heard that. I'll get into some of those terms later, but I just wanted to say from the outset that I will be pulling from my notes, because it's a huge amount of information, and I'm like, I'm getting older, so I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to really just kind of pull from that. I know a lot about a lot of this, but a lot of that I'm going to present to you, I learned in this process. So
yeah, that's cool. I'm sure you're not going to pull from it like, you know, the media does at the heartstrings of, you know, so many different people. And this is something that's been a common theme. Like a lot of stuff that we've talked about on the show kind of falls into these things of just people getting sucked into these, you know, cul-de-sacs or conspiracies, whether it be, you know, fully true or not. Like there's like, obviously, you know,
flat Earth,
these different sides to these stories that are kind of manufactured and all these things. And we have so much infighting going on. And that was kind of one of the catalyst that made me want to do even a presentation or a show like this. So here we are.
And the infighting that you're talking about, that's part of the design. That's designed into the thing. And once you start to understand the grammar, like I was saying, it's so easy to spot these things. So I had so what I wanted to do was go over a basic overview of psyop terminology, and then I had some case studies. So we're going to go over QAnon. So I wanted to choose, of course, 9/11. I wanted to choose relevant case studies. So I'm gonna go over like what it would be, and I'm trying to view this from a very analytical, very objective psyop lens. Like sort of, I don't want to attach my opinions about the whatever, because I mean, the way I feel about it, many of these topics, they're not an existential threat to me, and I don't really, I'm more of a person that deals with what's in front of me. But that being said, there's some key I focused in on several of the big ones, and we're going to do case studies on it. I'm going to go over, I know we don't have much time, so I'm going to try to get through this really quick. But that's the, it has to be this information has to be presented. It's not, it's like, it's really somebody standing up in front of you, and you're in a class and you're taking notes. And I don't have all of this memorized. It's in there. I'm aware of most of it, but like I said, I came across new things, and I'm like, wow. So I learned. I mean, and I was, unfortunately, I'm a Luddite, so I didn't get the technology all squared away for you. But anyway, so you want me to proceed?
Go for it. Yeah.
All right. So here's a broad overview of psyop, and this is just going to give a foundation, so people understand exactly what it is and what it isn't. So it's I explained what the definition was, and the core objectives of psyop: to influence perception, alter the way people view certain events, individuals, or issues, shape behavior, encourage or discourage specific actions like voting, protesting, joining a cause, destabilize opponents, create confusion or disarray within opposing groups to weaken their power influence, gain support, foster loyalty and trust by controlling narratives. That's the big one. Controlling the narrative is something you're going to hear over and over again. And psyop people, just like marketing people, in fact, if you just can think of psyop people, separate the word, the popular understanding of psyop. That's just something that happens. It's something that happens. That's a psyop. That's a psyop. It's actually a science, and it's an actual thing, and people actually do it. And so it has to be separated from that popular usage, just like conspiracy theory. It's like that's a pejorative.
So it's strategic and it's intentional. It's planned.
Oh, absolutely. What I was getting at was just think about it like marketing or advertising, because most of Edward Bernays, he's the nephew of Sigmund Freud. He's considered the American grandfather. He's the big daddy of marketing, but he's also a big daddy of propaganda. He wrote the book, and I have I got some good quotes for you from him. So, excuse me. So I'm right now I'm going over the really proper, really 101 psyop stuff. It's really boring. I'm going to get into some of the really interesting stuff here in a minute. But so the types of psyops, white psyops, and this kind of matches with the different types of propaganda. So openly sourced propaganda, where the origin of the information is clearly stated. Gray psyops, operations where the source of the message is ambiguous, leaving the audience unsure of who is behind the information. And black psyops.
Something anonymous, maybe?
Say again?
Something anonymous, maybe?
Yeah. Well, we're going to get into meme warfares. We're going to get into memes too, and that you'll be very shocked to know that that's high level psychological operation, propaganda type, intelligence type. A lot of the memes you see they come from dark rooms.
I've had a
And I
feeling
don't
for
mean
a long time, actually. That's cool confirmation because you see all these things like who's been making these? There's no like main people out there cranking out like a dozen a day, which it's actually that easy if you've been doing content creation and making videos and stuff. Making memes, that's fucking light work. You have all these influencers and Facebook people. You didn't even paid sponsored ads. They're just using memes now. It's fucking lazy and kind of pathetic
think about
on whatever degrees. Not hating on folks posting and making that shit, but you
yeah.
know what I mean.
Well, it's the thing is, man, is that when people are spreading memes and participating in that, it's like they don't really realize what's going on there. I mean, look, there's funny memes. I'm not necessarily talking about like, I'm talking about like there are people out there that can craft a meme that is more influential than a $1 million ad campaign. And so I did a big section on meme warfare. I'm gonna get into that. You're gonna be pretty surprised about that. But I mean, everyone knows. I mean, it's words and symbols. It's hearts and minds, man. It's a very and with the short attention span from social media, they work perfectly. And it's like I don't know how many. I mean, I'm not gonna say it, but I don't know how many memes. And we're going to go over some of these case studies, and it's like when you start to think about some of the memes that people are sharing that have to do with these these various different case studies I have for you. It's like they don't have a clue about kind of they're caught up in this web. It's the psyop logo that I have there. In fact, that video is from the fourth psyop battalion or group. And I took that video down, or I took that video, and the ghost in the machine is what the metaphor is. It's like you're there existing, but no one really can see you. You're there, and maybe people know you're there, maybe, and you're maybe haunting people. It's related to a philosopher that was like that. The ghost in the machine came from like somebody that was refuting Kant or something like that. But it's basically how we use it. It's it's like we're behind the scenes in the shadows. You don't see us, but we're pulling the strings in that regard. Not in the worldwide, like who controls everything type of thing. I mean, like who's influencing people's hearts and minds. So let me I'll carry on here. So the black psyops, the covert operations. That's where the message is deliberately falsified or misrepresented. So it's just like black propaganda. So, and propaganda, it goes hand in hand with psyop. You can't separate the two. And we'll go over that when I go over some of these terms. But so, in the definition of propaganda is systematic dissemination of information, biased, often exaggerated, selective, to influence. Here we go with the word again: influence public opinion or behavior. It's all about influencing hearts and minds. It always goes back to that. It's advertising, it's marketing, but it's, oftentimes it's marketing and advertising by people who want to do you harm because they're deceiving you. And, oftentimes that's the case for corporate, product advertising as well. But, sorry.
If I say something real quick?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Thank you. Because,
absolutely.
I try to, throw in these trifecta parallels, in regards to like, the trivium, right? Grammar, logic, rhetoric. And that can kind of correlate to a degree of, like the mind and heart and then the actions, like the three
Trinity
forms of, yeah. So, if obviously, the modus operandi is to control the mind and the emotions. So the actions are manipulated towards their favor.
Mind,
so
words, deeds.
The
you nailed it.
Yeah. So
you nailed it. Minds, words, deeds. You nailed it. That's exactly right.
And like what you're specifically talking about, though, is a military operation, right? That it's coming from the government, a government institution as an agenda.
Not anymore. Not anymore. No, because there's organizations like Rand Corporation. I mean, this is a private public sector. It's way back. I mean, even it's I mean, and heck, Sun Tzu talks about psyop. I have a quote from Sun Tzu in here. It goes to, I mean, it's ancient. It's ancient. And I have some of the historical context of that, I think. But the propaganda, yeah, Derek, if you guys want to, I'm just trying to go through this information. Anytime, man, it's your show. You want to chime in, just let me know. You know how I get going.
Yeah, keep
When the
going on your train of thought.
When this
Yeah.
baby
Come on,
hits,
brother. You're doing great. Thank you so much. Yeah,
when this baby hits 88 miles an hour, you're gonna see some serious stuff. Anyway, propaganda is just okay. We went over that. So unlike psyop, which could be more subtle or covert, propaganda often involves overt efforts to shape the narrative around political, social, or ideological issues, as well as well, marketing again. So that's that is, we're going to talk about modern propaganda in the digital age. And again, like I was telling you guys before, what I come to realize is that there is a fusion now, as opposed to what I did with, well, not really, because I mean we worked with traditional media. We worked with TV, radio, leaflets out of helicopters, but any way you could communicate, any way you could think of communicating a marketing campaign or an advertisement, that's how propaganda gets disseminated as well. So it's really important that people understand that they're one and the same. They're like two sides of the same coin. So if you want to understand propaganda, psyops is a whole big, but psyops and cyber warfare, the coming together of the technology with the AI and the deep fakes. I'm going to go into that here in a minute too. I'm not going to have a whole bunch of time. Let's see, 6:30. Okay. I'm going to try to get through all this. So in the digital age, the rise of social media, 24/7 news cycles, information overload has created new avenues for spreading propaganda rapidly and globally, which we all know that. Traditional forms. Here's Derek. The meme, before the meme was posters, films, speeches, still exist. Modern propaganda often take the form of, if you think about a lot of the Nazi propaganda or I think more fitting would be, because it was more visual, would be the Soviet propaganda with all the imagery, all the imagery of, portraying, I mean, even on the American side before the during World War II, how they're portraying certain groups of people as, that's called an enemy image, by the way. So that's a psyop tactic. It's a propaganda tactic where you are creating a meme and you're making somebody look like an animal or dehumanizing them so you can justify bad acts towards them, right? Or get the crowd, the masses to say, hey, you thinking, Derek? I think he was going to say something.
No, that's a great term to throw into the mix of, the kind of like the why they're putting some of these, psychological operations on, is to dehumanize. So it kind of desensitizes, it's like these domino effects that can occur to people to act certain ways towards other people that they're being propagandized against or whatever, right? So,
yep, that's the enemy, and that's a tactic. I'm sorry, Leslie.
I was just thinking, or it seems like to justify an action, like
absolutely
a political action or a
that's
war.
Exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Let's see here. Okay, so social media campaigns, targeted messages, and memes spread to influence public opinion, often without the audience realizing they are part of a coordinated effort. So this is modern propaganda in the digital age. And so I'm going to read that again. Social media campaigns, targeted messages, and memes spread to influence public opinion, often without the audience realizing they are part of a coordinated effort. Remember, I told you they're all kind of part of the machine, that they don't realize. That's what I meant. Echo chambers, online environments, forums, Discord, Reddit, where individuals only receive information that reinforces their existing beliefs, which increases polarization. So that's dividing and conquering to a certain degree. And again, some of these, what I found over the years, especially when I would listen to Richard Grove talk about many of the historical, he goes into history, he goes into Carol Quigley quite a bit, is that nothing is organic. It's like everything. It's like everything, even the hippie movement, we were talking about that. It's like if something becomes organic and it's dangerous, there's people that get sent into it to subvert it. And I'm going COINTELPRO over here. I got a case study for that if I can get to it. And that's exactly infiltration. Yeah. That was when the FBI was kind of focusing on the left wing. Now they're kind of the pendulum swinging, and they're focused on the right wing, and everybody. And it's like it's just say something, Derek.
Keeps people off their.
You're good. You're good. I do a lot of gestures sometimes, but Leslie, go for it.
It's Italian. He's Italian.
Yeah.
Creating confusion, creating people like look over here. No, look over here. Look over there.
Well, it's wherever the oligarchs, and I believe in this kind of oligarchic system, and the state's merely just a sort of a tool, and most of the participants, politicians, it's like there's this idea, there's this aura that there's, it's old. It goes all the way back to Italy, to the black nobility, to the what was the banking? Derek, help me with this since you're Italian. No, it's the black. We're okay. So Machiavelli.
Talking about black nobility, Vatican,
where modern banking originated from was in what's the city in Italy that has the water? It's
Venice.
Yeah, the Venetians. Yeah, so that's where modern and they ruled behind the scenes, and that's where this idea of oligarchy came from. Well, maybe not originated from, but they kind of mastered it. Machiavelli, when he wrote The Prince, he was addressing those people, and he was explaining to those people how to rule behind the scenes and how you should do it. And so that's the oligarchic system. Much of what we see, it's you've heard the saying over and over again. It's bread and circus. It's it's all the world's a stage. So anyway, misinformation, echo chambers. We went over that. Misinformation, disinformation. That's a big one. They're starting to criminalize that in Europe. So literally, false or misleading information spread. Now, propagandists and psyop people, this is all intentional. You spread it unintentionally. It's misinformation and malicious intent, disinformation. So there's ambiguity there in those two terms. One's intentional, one's not. You might accidentally spread some kind of.
Yeah, and that's I think they might have made a mistake, right? Instead of something that was deliberate, like disinformation in a sense. They're disrespecting other people. They're trying to take advantage of them. So they're throwing out that disinformation, whatever. That's kind of how I distinguish the two. But
yeah, it's. Trying to lead people again, deception. That's all this is deception. It's very simple. There's 1,000 ways to do it. This is, it's all fallacy. You know what I mean? So key tactics.
The psyop is intentionally propagating incorrect information as saying it's true, and then punishing people who speak against that disinformation.
Well, it's more a political ploy to prevent people from saying what the regime, the power elite don't want them to say. The labels now, from excuse me, propaganda psyop standpoint, somebody will, intentionally release false information for a particular outcome. What I'm talking about with the criminalizing disinformation, misinformation, is that they're trying to censor people. That's what that's about. So if I could say that, hey, what you're saying, if you say something about, like, say, flat Earth, what if they decide to criminalize that? Like, hey, climate change. If you're a climate change denier, or if you're a vax denier,
they're talking about it here in France, man.
Well,
any kind of medical, even criticism against big pharma, that kind of shit. It's on the fucking table.
So
And I think
what?
that's part of the reason of this newer cyber psyop, end goal for them for this, draconian, censorship of all this shit.
Well, many of the politicians that are carrying this stuff out, they're clueless. They're dumb. They don't. They're just, they're getting marching orders. I mean, there's some,
Sure,
smart
yeah.
individuals. Don't get me wrong, but
They're on
like I
stream.
said, nothing's organic, man. It's like, these people, those people don't read those bills. I mean, the bills have, think about all the bills that they have. They don't read those thousands of pages. No, they just sign off on it because so and so said so. Now AI is getting, added into the mix, and yeah, it's crazy. Well, maybe politicians won't be needed, and that's probably where they're going. Actually, I don't know. Just replace them with AI. But
they got that AI where they can reduce, a 1,000-page, document into like 2
absolutely.
sentences.
Well, yeah, they were having, they were building AI preachers and doctors, and yeah, that. And there's a further along topic I wanted to touch on about psyop, where it's going, and it's kind of frightening because. And I'm going to get back to my notes here because I want to get through this, but there was a thought in my mind that occurred, especially with there was a psyop right now, or propaganda right now is all about influence. Okay, and and I'm going to go into MK Ultra too, and I'm going to tell you why MK Ultra, the attention it gets is ridiculous. And I'll go into Michael Aquino, who was a psyop guy. He was a high level psyop. He did the same thing I did. And have you heard of Michael Aquino, Leslie? Okay, so I told Derek this, and I'm gonna sidetrack here. I have to bring this up. So Michael Aquino, if you could separate him from his caricature, and you can like I did, try to view what his work through a psyop lens to try to understand. He wrote Mind War, and I listened to hours and hours and hours of this guy speak, and he went into psyop for the stated purpose. This is Michael Aquino now. And I'll get to why I think that whole pedophilia Monterey thing was a operation. He is I realized after listening to his interviews over a 10-year span, I have this thing about me where I pick up on little nuances, and I can detect inconsistencies. And it's just something I have. I don't know. I listened to hours and hours of his interviews, even the interviews he did with, concerning his Temple of Set stuff, which, I'm not interested in that, but I wanted to hear what he had to say. Over a 10-year period, he was completely consistent with everything he said. There was no lies to take. I'm like, this guy, I realized that this guy is, what's the word? He's ridiculously honest. What's the word? He's honest to a fault. And he says things that he probably shouldn't say. Now, something you need to understand about Aquino is that he was everything that he talked about in terms of his military experience. I could vet that. So I know for a fact he was being honest about that. But then he started talking about some of the things he did. He's one of the most foundational characters in modern psyop. But he initially went into, and his mom was like a 200 IQ. And I think the IQ gets passed down from, I learned all this listening to this guy. The IQ gets passed down from the mother side, I believe. So this dude's super high IQ, right? And he went into psyop initially because he decided to make a military career because he wanted to influence the enemy to do what we told them to do, as opposed to shoot them or kill them. He thought that was a much more humane. I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like who I think this guy, or who I've been told this guy is. I'm not even going to debate that stuff. But he, I got off track there. But Mind War was, yeah, I got off track on that. I'll have to go back. I have some Aquino stuff.
Yeah, so it seemed like he wanted to really popularize the term mind war instead of using psychological operation all the time.
Oh, yeah, it was MK
That seems
Ultra.
like more blatant of, like, hey, we're gonna be doing some mind wars on you guys, or kind of stuff.
As opposed to shoot you. Yeah, it's
even just
that
operation. But
well,
they both sound kind of like fucked up. But like,
well, the thing I got off track, Derek. I do this. He had friends in high places, You know, the things he said that he did. There's no way I'm in. Like, I had a security clearance. I'm in. You can't, like, that dude had security clearances I never heard of. He can't just go and do what they said he did with us. You know, that's not going to happen. So he was talking about MK Ultra. He had connections, and he said some interesting things about 9/11. And I, after all these hours of listening to him and not detecting any inconsistency with any of his narrative, period, I'm like, this dude's telling the truth. And I realized at the time, like, he was dangerous to the military establishment and the intelligence establishment because he says things that he shouldn't say, like what he said about 9/11 and what he said about MK Ultra. And he said it was an absolute waste of money. It's not at all what people think it was. You cannot make, like, they were trying to turn. And I have a case study on that. They were trying to influence people to become like, you know, like Manchurian Candidate type things. You can't do that. Not with modern methods. Now, with I was talking about before, nanotech, inserting electrical, you know, control, like Jose Delgado. Everyone's seen that famous bull running in circles. He connected the receiver, the electronic receiver, to the bull's brain. He was remote controlling that bull. That's 1980. We have nanotech now. Elon Musk, anyone? I mean, I'm not saying that necessarily, but hey, the technology's there. They know how to connect to a brain and to control a brain. So that's where psyops ultimately. That's what really, you know, it keeps me awake in terms of this topic, because we're getting away from the influence, and you know, it's easier to control people physically or, you know, biologically than it is to influence them. And with the MK Ultra situation, that's what Aquino said, and he said it was a huge waste of money. And he said he was ahead of his time. I mean, what he did, like, he built PSYOP, and they had to get rid of him though because he was a set guy. You know, he was associated with Anton LaVey, which was seemed like it was a big what do you call it, grift. They made a lot of money off that. We discussed that, but I'm getting sidetracked. Let me get back to this, and I'll hit Aquino up here shortly. So let's talk about the key tactics in psyop propaganda framing. So the way information is presented shapes how people perceive it. So by controlling the frame, psyop and propaganda can steer public interpretation of events or issues. Controlling the frame, that's a pretty popular phrase. I'm sure you guys have heard of that. Control the frame. How do you frame it? How do you frame the argument, right?
Yeah, it's like control the narrative. Same thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you're the one controlling the frame, the people that are the argument that's being framed, the people, basically you're inserting the argument, whatever it is, out there, and people are just accepting that. Let me go on here. Fear mongering, using fear to manipulate behavior is a common tactic. Fear mongering. By exaggerating threats, psyops or propagandists can convince public to support policies or actions they might otherwise oppose. Echo chamber, we talked about that earlier. Everybody agrees. There's no dissenting voices. That's not a good thing, is it? Not always. I mean, even in a tight knit. I mean, you need to, you know, because not everybody's right, and it's like, so you have to have dissenting voices. You have to. That's the whole basis of debate, and it's echo chamber, and we see a lot of the echo chamber by spreading the memes, the same memes over and over. It's like, that's kind of, you know, and then nobody will hear anything outside of that, but that belief that they have, or that, you know, it's like, no, flat Earth. Oh, you're if you don't believe in flat Earth, then you are this XYZ or whatever, right? Or vice versa.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it reminds me of echo chamber. What's that experiment where, you know, these social experiments, you know, back in like 50s, 30s, 60s, 70s, you know, they were continuous, right?
Tuskegee?
I feel like, you know, a lot of these psychological operations, you know, get the green light because, you know, they've either done or reviewed some of these social studies and like see what works as far as influence. And so like the one where like people are in an elevator and people are like facing a certain direction, and so everyone kind of goes in the
like
same direction.
Milgram.
It's like it's a simulation, you know, in such a weird way. It's like, why do people what's the psychology behind that, and how are people able to like flip that switch where they're not manipulated like that, right?
It's so the thing.
Conformity.
Sorry, Leslie.
Conformity, right? There's a drive to
Well,
be.
yeah, but there's cultural context to different groups, and I'm going to get into this here in a minute. So you have to understand, like, there is evolutionary behavioral. When I say evolution, I'm talking about, let's just say, groups of people. There's, propaganda, very deft and talented propagandists, marketers, advertisers. They understand these sort of innate archetypal drives, and different people groups have different sort of archetype. I mean, there's a collective archetype type situation, but it's anything that could be exploited in terms of your individual nature or your collective nature will be exploited, and they will know about it. And just like a lot of the symbology we talk about, where people are, every time they see a symbol, they're like, oh, that's these people are a cult. It's like, no, advertisers, marketers, they understand that these symbols that they're using are ancient, they're archetypal. We are impacted by them subconsciously. It's not really the occult. I mean, if you want to call it the occult in the sense of it's like sort of unknown knowledge, if you want to use the term in that way, sure. But when you talk about marketing people that are using these symbols, and it's like, I see these memes and all these symbols, like, well, look, it's Google, it's all. No, they just know that it sells shit. They don't know, like, the marketing people, like, they don't know that. They just know symbols are archetypal. They're ancient. They've been around. The sun. The moon. Stars. The wind, the river, whatever. Anyway, so astroturfing. Astroturfing. This is a big one we see quite a bit, and these are all key tactics. These are all key tactics I'm going over right now. Astroturfing involves.
Yeah. Go for it. Sorry, you're going for it.
Astroturfing involves creating fake grassroots movements to make it seem as though there's widespread public support or opposition to an issue, when in reality it's being coordinated from the top. So whenever a popular, you might have what you would consider a popular movement, you can name a few. We've seen a few in the last 10 years. You think it's a popular organic upspringing of, and there is general discontent, but again, going back to the hippie movement, it was that was mostly that was not organic. That was there was a natural sort of reaction to the Vietnam War, and but that that whole Ken Casey thing, the whole LSD, that's a whole other subject. But so excuse me, perception management. So this involves shaping how an audience perceives events, individuals, issues by controlling the flow of information. That's why we're looking at the censorship, because they have to control the information, because they don't want you to know that what they're telling you is bullshit. Modified limited hangout. This is QAnon. This is a key tactic in PSYOP. It is a tactic where partial truths are revealed to distract from the full story or larger, more damaging facts. So this allows the audience to feel informed while crucial information is concealed. So, that little bit, and I have I'm not going to go into my personal opinion about all this, but I can tell you from a PSYOP perspective, it's very clear what that is. Point blank. And I don't know that there's anybody that's ever been in PSYOP or propaganda or intelligence that thinks that's what many people do. Just FYI. I'm just throwing that out there. And this is coming from the people that were trained in manufacturing this stuff. So,
can you give an example or two of modern astroturfing? Popular astroturfing.
Well, yeah. So, if you're creating fake grassroots movements, well, look at some of the grassroots movements we've seen. Some of the money going into some of these groups, BLM, Antifa. What's the one on the right? A lot of people seem to think they're feds. I mean, I'm not saying either or. I'm giving you examples of where this would fit. Any type of movement that seems an organic, popular movement, like Antifa, like BLM, like I can't think of the right wing group that's they do the you know the I'm not saying whether they are or not, but you know, it's whenever it's you know it's whenever there's like they're trying. Oh, okay. You could talk about whenever there's an issue that's not like really popular, but they're trying to make it seem to be, and there's all this like, hey man, I don't know. We seen a debate the other day, and they were talking about I don't know if that's astroturfing so much. I think it is, but they were talking about certain situations with pets, and then I seen most of the some of these politicians like trying to whether or not that's happening or not, I don't know. But there's like a lot of the issues surrounding the movement of people into wherever certain places, certain countries, and
What about,
whenever
what about
there's
the transgender stuff? Is that partly astroturfing? Like the
well, yeah,
medical?
yeah, because there's not a popular support for that. There never was, and then that goes into the. I mean, what they're doing now, it's like you're looking at medical. You see the big pharma, the amount of money getting, made off of what's happening. As far as operations, that's all commercial stuff. It's like that's all commercial exchange. You know, I mean, partly it's a commercial thing. There's a lot of money to be made there, and these people don't care that they're destroying people. And like, as far as the advertising and the marketing behind convincing people, that's not organic. It's not. Has it ever been organic? Has that ever? I mean, we're not talking about just people loving who they want to. We're talking about something totally different there. So yes, there is. Now, what's hard to distinguish is where it's coming from. Is it coming from private sector or public sector? And what's the end goal there? So yeah, that's astroturfing. Like, hey, everybody supports this. If you don't, then there's something wrong with you. You're a Nazi, or you're a whatever. We know the words. If you don't support, and that's astroturfing. It's like, well, look, man, and then people have to go on the offensive, like, hey, no, I'm cool with, like, if you want to be with who you want to be with and love who you want to love. But I'm talking about, like, hey, man, this medical industry, they're making a crap ton of money, and there's something. We need to have this debate. We need to have this. No. We can't. You are a hateful person. Shut up. So the astroturfing part of that is, hey, everybody supports that, and that gets into the Overton window as well, because that was not, I'm not trying to make an argument for older necessarily is more wise in terms of like how they used to think about things, but that, I mean, that the type of things we're seeing, especially with the medical industrial complex, they don't care. It's a commercial transaction. They don't give a shit about these people. And Richard Grove, he goes very deep into the Rockefellers and some of the other people promoting feminism. They don't care. They didn't care about women and civil rights and women's suffrage. They don't care about that. They care about, getting more people into the workforce, taxing more people, or whatever, separate the family so that way. It's funny too, because the Rockefellers put a lot of money into the school system, and Richard Grove goes into the education system pretty deep. So anyway, let me get back on track, guys. I'm sorry. I get, Leslie, I do this. I'm sorry. Derek knows this.
You're doing great, so keep going.
Yeah. Can I ask you a quick question real quick before you get
Absolutely.
back into it? Because,
Absolutely.
yeah, it seems like humanity is getting their asses whooped by all these psychological operations, putting us in whatever direction that they want us to be devolved into, it seems, right?
Idiocracy,
have you noticed any...
I'm sorry, go ahead, man.
Any example? No worries. Any examples of where there were failed psychological operations where like it didn't fucking work.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't really think of one off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean, it's just like any other thing.
They're
It's
not
like,
like
just
10% or
think of
1,000.
it.
Like,
Well, think of it like an advertising campaign. Think of it as like, hey man, you're trying to do an ad or advertising campaign for something that you're trying to promote on social media. You know, sometimes you'll put together something that just like clicks with people, and it's like, man, that kind of surprised me. Sometimes you won't. You know, that's what we're talking about. So it's really good to keep that parallel there, the comparison between advertising, because that's, I mean, it's two sides of the same coin. Anyway, so let me go on to, let's see, I think that's all. That's actually all for like the intro to psyop as a did I cover everything for you guys in terms of psyop? As it's influencing hearts and minds, and it's basically advertising, it's marketing, and it encompasses a big collection of, you know, depending upon where it's coming from. But psyop is not the term that everybody uses it as. They're confusing that with like a conspiracy, and a conspiracy is just something, you know, where people come together, conspire, which happens all the time. And somehow, you know, when people do that, that's a theory, you know, it's like whatever. So I got a whole list of terms here I'm going to go over. I'm going to probably hit some of the ones, and this is going back to the grammar. So, so psyop, I'm going to go over that again. This is, by the way, this is about 50 of the most crucial terms I could come up with. So psyop, operations aimed at influencing the emotions, motives, and behavior. Target audiences. That's the same vernacular. That's the same word that you use in marketing and advertising. Target audience. And in fact, I was trying to find my old manual. The military gives you manuals out for every stupid thing, and it's written in there, target audience. And it reads like, oftentimes it reads like a book on marketing. So your target audience. Who's your target audience? That's psyop. That's propaganda, and then that's advertising. You know. So propaganda, dissemination of biased or misleading information to promote a particular political cause or point of view. That's a little bit of a biased, I think, definition, but you know, pretty much covers it. Disinformation, deliberate dissemination of false or misleading information, misinformation. That's, you know, without malicious intent. Astroturfing, creating fake grassroots movements to manufacture the appearance of widespread support. So anytime you see what you would call a grassroots movement, and it appears that it has wide support, just like you were saying before, and you know, it's like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would people support that? But see, they want you to support that, so they show it as being supported. That's how that's manipulated. And I mean, man, it's just 5 ways to Sunday. People are just getting it. And with social media now, it's like, man, it's just the AI of the ability of social media. I mean, it's getting into the realm of, like I said, cyber warfare. It's evolving to such a degree with AI that it's hard to imagine where it's going to go. And like I said, I think it's going to go towards more of the biological Delgado model, personally, kind of like, you know, Aldous Huxley was talking about. But anyway, so false flag operation, we've heard that. That's pretty common. So covert operation designed to deceive by making it appear as if actions are being carried out by another party. So that was something in Cuba. They wanted to, you know, fake an attack on Cuba. Leslie, I don't know what your generation was, but are you Gen X? You're Gen X too, aren't you, Leslie?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I'm on the one extreme side of it a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So we're on the same page here. So we kind of knew about that a little bit. We heard about it when we were, you know, growing up. Cognitive dissonance. This is a big one. The mental discomfort experienced when holding conflicting beliefs or being presented with new information that contradicts established views. So you're not going to change your mind, even though objectively you know that you're wrong. You're just going to, you know, controlled opposition. This is a big one, especially with people that the alternative media. Controlled opposition. It's a big term that gets thrown around quite a bit. What does that mean? infiltrating or creating opposition movements. Infiltrating or creating opposition movements. Who's infiltrating and who's creating the opposition movements? Not us. To monitor, manipulate, or neutralize dissent. So it's all about neutralizing dissent or monitoring, like COINTELPRO. For example, they were, you'd have moles, you'd have people, not only just that, but people to steer it. Like I said, if a popular movement is organically popping up, what the regime do what they'll ultimately do is they'll and the Jay Dyer talks about this a lot. They'll steer it in the direction they want it to by controlled opposition. Can we think of anybody that might fit controlled opposition? Who's such and such guy or gal?
We did a show with the Beth Martins, and you're, and friends with her, Beth
Martins.
Yeah. She did, has her series on, archetypes of controlled opposition, which is really.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting topic. I'm really into Jung, so I definitely have to find that. The big lie. So I got, let me see here. I got about 50 total terms here. So the big lie, we know what that is. Something so big it has to be true. It can't, that's bandwagon effect, a tendency for people to adopt certain behavior styles or attitudes because others are doing so, regardless of personal beliefs. What's cool, Hey man, when I was a kid, we had to have, those Adidas shoes or whatever. Bandwagon effect. These are all terms.
Have you noticed, certain things that, the truther things and spiritual, it's like almost like a virtue signaling type of thing. Like you're not cool if you're not doing the alchemy, and they're just throwing out buzzwords and not really actually doing the fucking work. You notice that type of thing?
Well, the thing, and part of that too is just, the band, the bandwagon, like you said, it's that belonging to a group. Man, that it's something that I've been thankful for is I have this opposition towards this group thinking, cult of personality. I've always had this, I just have this like innate, intuitive gut, just like, and it sounds funny because I was in the military, but I was just there hanging out, man. It's like, I breezed through it. Like, they loved me there because I figured out how to, pull the strings kind of, and I learned how to do some cool shit and never had any issue there. But I'm, many of the special operations guys, the Green Berets, they're outside of the box thinkers, man. They're not like me. It's like, I'm not like, it sounds stupid, but it's like, I've never been cool with like authority really. Like, cause usually authority is ridiculous. And it's not just, hey man, being told what to do or something like that. I mean, when I was growing up, if my mom told me to do something because I was doing some dumb shit, I didn't have a problem with that. I mean, like authority, like, hey, I have this title, I have this position, and because of that, I'm gonna use that to, act in this really stupid way. I've always been oppositional to that, and always. But so yeah, it's weird story, man. I'm not the type of guy that should have ever went there, but that's what you get when you're young and you're like, screw it. I'm just not really thinking this through. I'm just, I don't know why I did that. But it was cool, man. I'm glad I'm here now explaining it to you because now I can help people get through this. So virtue signaling, expressing opinions or making, this is a big one. We've heard this. Expressing opinions or making gestures to demonstrate one's moral correctness. Signs in your yard, love is love. That's virtue signaling. Even if you ask those people to recite that, they won't know. They don't know what's on there. They're just doing it because they know that if they do that, it's the moral thing to do. But they don't really have any idea why they're doing it. And they don't really have any actual. I mean, those signs in particular. It's like, what is that?
Could that apply also to people's political signs on their front yard? Like they support them because they back up whatever
virtue signaling.
That they're promising and lip service.
It's you're demonstrating. Absolutely. You're demonstrating your moral correctness, which is subjective.
Yeah. And we've heard this.
I mean,
it's
coming
thrown
from
out.
this explanation.
Have you,
Sorry, go ahead.
in modern times, how have you heard the word being misused? Virtue signaling.
What's that?
Like, you know, and just like,
well, I mean, people don't know what it means.
Like,
people that don't know what it, like, if you don't know what the word actually means, it's misused in that way. Like, just because you take a stance on something doesn't mean you're virtue signaling. Like, virtue signaling is when somebody is taking a stance on something because they think it's popular, or it's instead of like actually believing, like putting a sign up in your yard anyway. Like, is that really actually doing anything? If you really believe in, I mean, maybe it is, but if you really believe it, like, I don't wear my beliefs on my front yard.
It's like on Facebook
but
when they let you. On Facebook, they let you put those little rings. On Facebook, they have you where you can put the little rings around your picture. Or you can put a symbol to show that you're in support.
Virtue signaling, absolutely perfect example. That's exactly what that is. And hey, we can now influence people to support XYZ thing with that little circle because they're attaching it to them because everyone else is, and they're virtue signaling that it's the right thing to do. It's the moral thing to do. Morality has nothing to do with that. You know what I mean? And that's a whole different topic.
People, actually, you know, like, hey, like, has anyone asked you, Adam, you know, how come you haven't put the Ukrainian flag on your profile picture yet? You know, it's been like 2 years. What the hell, man?
Well, because
you're Lithuanian, so represent, man. Like,
well, yeah, but I know a lot about what led up to that, so I can go on for hours about the 2014 coup, and
damn, yeah.
We did some shit there, and I'm not going to go into that right now, but yeah, I mean, look, man, I'm against war, period. Especially, like, you know, I mean, it's like it's especially what we're talking about now. It's like there so many lives lost, like hundreds of 500 plus thousand young men. And I watched a video from Telegram, and I'm like, why? Why? And it's like, well, people will give you the reasons, but I know the whole background story to all of it. So it's like like the general public talking to me about Ukraine and 2014 Maidan massacre. Like, I can Luhansk, Donetsk. I could break the shit down. So me talking to some dude that watches CNN or Fox, like, I cannot talk to these people, and I don't talk to people in this way because they have no idea what they're talking about, and they don't even attempt to. They watch the news and they accept that as, they don't even realize the news is 100%. We controlled every narrative. Every narrative was controlled. Left, right, center, conspiracy. Every narrative. And the people that are presenting it, they're chosen, mostly. The people that are dangerous to the system, they're the people that are getting deplatformed. They're the people that are, and they're really not even dangerous to the system anymore. The only time, you know, that starts to happen is when people start to cult the personality follow them. So all these big name people that are conspiracy people, they're feeding people narratives. They're you know, there's no way around it, because in a closed system, if Joe Rogan, Joe Rogan has the ability to influence how many young people to try DMT, and he did. And I'm not even like questioning whether that's, you know, I'm just saying, because I was having a conversation about that. I'm like, you think a guy like Joe Rogan, first of all, gets paid all that money? I mean, and this is going to the question of free market. Like, okay, not really, but somebody like him can get on the airwaves and influence people to such a degree. DMT, I mean, how many hundreds of thousands, you know, just because he said it. And it's like, hey, if he was dangerous to the regime, to the system, to the oligarchs, do you think he'd be there, you know, doing what he's doing? Of course not, because he has that much influence. So you have to understand influence. You know what I mean? The influences that are becoming censored or online platforms, memes, speech. Not Joe Rogan. They're not going after him. So, and I'm not, I'm not trying to say anything about him. He does some good work, but like I look at, from my perspective, I look at a person like that. I'm like, he's not necessarily controlled opposition, but he's not a threat either. Let's just say that, he's probably, and because of the amount of money that kind of flows into that dude's hands, he's probably serving the powers that be in some way that's beneficial to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't allow it. That's how it works. I mean, it's
giving him some confines, like some boundaries or parameters for what he can or can't say, maybe.
Well, he changed his tune on a couple things that people have pointed out over the years. Now, people change their mind. Flat Earth, NASA, all that stuff. And I'll go into that. Let me, I want to get into some of these. And Leslie, I have that the question that you asked me. I want to make sure I get into that because it's already 7:15. So let me try to speed through these. And it's all my fault. I'm sorry, guys. I get going, man. 88 miles an hour. I'm telling you.
Yeah, so we got like split. So I'm just going to then. We got to leave it. Or when?
No, I'll stay to 8. I'll stay to 8. I'll just make adjustments because this is a good conversation. Let me see. Let me make sure I got. All right, so
speed with that 88. It sounds great. Thank you.
1.21 gigawatts. Divide and conquer, a strategy. That's an old term. That's as old as, that's Sun Tzu era. A strategy of creating this is psyop. The strategy of creating a division within an opposing group to weaken or neutralize their power. So you're creating division. You do that by influence. Subversion. So efforts to undermine power, authority, legitimacy in an institution of government from within. So most of the people that we kick, that we are acquaintances with, and we have a particular outlook towards government. And the thing about when I get into the flat Earth is that every institution is being delegitimized. Carl Jung's an institution. And if I'm someone who accepts this idea that every institution of power is, and we're talking about power in a very specific way, Carl Jung's work has power because it's relevant and it's been, various reasons. And me not liking Carl Jung because he's like the authority figure. That's kind of where we're at now. It's like people don't, dissolving trust in government is not necessarily a bad thing, but when you dissolve trust in everything, you have nothing. So, is it deserved? Is it deserved? Yeah, maybe. That's an argument to be made or a debate to be had. But when people don't believe in, and even science, it's like people are like science, man. It's like it's been around. I'm not saying all the science with a trademark circle, the science. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the verb, not the noun. You know what I mean? Science is a verb. It's not a noun.
I was gonna say,
you know what I mean? And it's like,
it doesn't make sense.
you faded out. What was that?
I was gonna say something that made it more of a verb than a noun, but anyways, yeah, go for it.
Absolutely, it's a trivium. It's a method. It's a process.
Yeah, sorry.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to say.
But what I'm saying is that like people, I see is a complete attack on everyone's like every belief in anything is being eroded, and it's like people. Like I said, in our circles, it's like we have a pretty particular view about, these things, but you have to understand that there's people that are behind the scenes, like they're thinking about, like, we want to destroy any sense of anything objective, like you were talking about before, Leslie, the example. Nothing is objectively real. Everything's subjective. Guess what that leads to? Complete control of the crowd, man. Simple, because you don't believe, what do you believe in? It's nihilism. It's on and on and on.
Hedonism and all that shit.
It's
damn.
Well, it's just what's the point of anything?
Yeah, it creates a lot of confusion too, and then people who don't know what's true, where to go, what to do, they're not thinking for themselves, so then
Absolutely.
they follow follow the leader, so to speak.
And then something else to add to that, and when that happens also, guess what's really easy to happen when someone who does know how to influence people and control people comes along? Wow. That person that, because they don't know what's up or down, left or right, because of nothing's true. Everything's subjective. And well, that's cult leader. That's, hey, I can convince you to, first of all, and this goes back to the process of, especially with like the grooming gangs and MK Ultra. You can't really make anybody do anything. Ultimately, it's like Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. You can't ultimately, like, you can always, like, you can't force somebody to think a certain way. And that's the problem with propaganda, and that's the problem they've been trying to sort out. That's why it keeps me awake, because it's like, ultimately, I can only I can't force you to think a certain way. I can influence you to think a certain way, and like we're saying. So what happens though in a lot of these grooming gangs, or like, you hear these stories where they'll drug oftentimes it's a young lady that gets taken or picked up by some, they call them grooming gangs, and they'll just drug her up, physical abuse, trauma. And that's what that's kind of what MK Ultra was doing. And like what Michael Aquino said, which was brilliant, that's not how the mind works. Like, I can, you might agree to do what I want you to do or tell you to do, but I really can't force you to, and that's the big thing right there. Right. And so when you strip people of any sense of ability to not be forced to do what other people want them to do, when you strip them of that ability, which we're kind of talking about this right now, then they're going to be easily controlled. And so when you see the powers that be, or the regime, or whoever, the oligarchs, they're trying to, like you said, Leslie, get people going in so many different directions. They don't, it's, you become like a leaf in the stream, and you're at the will of the stream. So and I'm not even promoting like any particular ideology, religion, or dogma or anything like that. I'm just saying that when people don't, it's that old saying, if you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for it. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Do you think that people that do high level propaganda, I mean, even now, like AI's telling people how to do shit. Do you think they don't know that? I mean, it's like, we're just going to, and when you go, and by the way, this is the whole structure for a cult anyway. When you first start, they separate you. They replace, they separate you from your family. They replace your language. They have their own language, their own, various different things, belief system, words. I mean, and they strip away your sense of objectivity, your sense of, they are basically erasing you, and they're going to replace you with what they want you to be. And it has to be a certain, not everybody's keen for this. You know what I mean? Not everybody's, sorry, Derek, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, not everyone's keen to this. And for those that are down with, looking into rabbit holes and stuff, it seems that too many people have been, digging down too much and not doing the proper like inner work, coupled with, this external truth seeking and all that. And it seems like, one of the psyops is to make people just have these endless debates and endless rabbit holes. And see these memes and how people react to them, like every single thing is a lie. Every single thing that comes out of the mouth is a lie, and this and that. They don't understand.
Nothing's objective.
Tactics. Did they lie about the time or the weather or all this stuff? Like everything on the news is a lie. Just like.
And that's kind of what I was getting at before, Derek. Was
do they have
exactly right what you're saying?
Yeah, is paltering in your list of definitions? By the way. Paltering.
Use that in a sentence. I'm not sure.
Like, the definition would be more of, you're going over something and you're trying to lie about it. You're, peppering in truths and falsities about it.
Yeah.
pretty much. And,
Yeah,
but,
that's
like
like a
highlighting the
limited
truth
hangout.
so people latch onto it. That's the hook line.
That's
and
a modified. That's a modified limited hangout. It's QAnon.
That,
Yeah, there's
yeah, like they
truth
went over the
within
gamut of all
your
the conspiratorial stuff, and like all the woke as fuck new jacks kind of latched onto it, and you know, like they finally had time since the dawning of the Romans, you know that.
So
I
Paul,
had a friend of. Sorry, go ahead, Leslie.
I'm just reading the definition. Paltering can involve failing to disclose relevant information, but unlike lying by omission, paltering involves the active disclosure of true but misleading information. Right? So it's
that's a new word for me. Thank you, Derek. I don't think I've ever heard. I thought you said paltry, and I was like, paltry. I didn't understand.
Yeah, like
but no, paltry. Okay,
no, like,
cool.
It is on some.
Let's let this man get back on track.
Yeah.
All right, so
Back to you, brother,
I'm going to go over a couple key terms. And then I'm going to hit a couple of these case studies, and then I want to get to your question that you left with me, Leslie, about the mental health, because that's something that when I was looking into that, I realized I'd heard recently how the Soviet Union, they had used these fake diagnoses of mental health problems to neutralize dissidents. And I started getting to that. I was like, oh shit, that's kind of what she's talking about. And I'm like, And I had heard not too long ago, somebody did a lecture on how we're starting to see that in the West by how they're using. The big thing is changing terminology. Words, again, going back to nothing has meaning. Nothing's true. Nothing's real. Words aren't real. They don't have meaning. We can just define them. We can just turn them into whatever. I mean, hey, man, I'm all for creating new words, but like you didn't create that. You don't get to change it. I mean, you can add to it. You can modify it or whatever, but like, what's wrong with that? You know, it's a very, very, people need to understand the danger of redefining words. And like we were talking about with censorship and jailing people for misinformation. Now we're talking about like gulag type stuff, like Soviet Union, and it's happened. But anyway, so let me go through these. I'll pick out, I'm not going to go through them all. I'm going to pick out the big ones. Normalization, Leslie, the process of making radical or controversial ideas, actions, or policies appear normal and acceptable through repeated exposure. That's what we went over before. And the Overton window is part of that too, where you're moving the frame of the acceptable debate. So you're constantly kind of just moving a little bit. So what people wouldn't even consider, they're going past that, like what's considered, and I mean, again, I'm not trying to dive into any sort of, morality or ethic, or dogma type of thing. I'm just trying to cover this from that very particular analytical angle to explain it. Cult of personality, the creation of a heroic idealized image of a leader to foster loyalty and control over population. That's how many times has that happened in over history? Now that's historically happened, and they just they recognize that's the case. And hey, man, that's a tactic now. Hey, we've seen in the past that there's these historical figures, and the people follow them, and why don't we just make one? Lenin said the opposite will control. What was that famous quote about controlling the opposition? Very, very true. Okay, let's see here. Manufacturing consent. That's a Noam Chomsky. I remember reading that book back in '94. The process by which governments or powerful entities manipulate public opinion to gain approval for policies or action. So you're manufacturing consent. I mean, it's just what it sounds like. Overton window, the range of ideas or policies considered acceptable or mainstream in public discourse. So what does that apply? What we were just talking about before, correct? And
is that include,
all right, let me
even the goalposts and all that shit.
Sorry.
That rhetoric.
Sorry?
People say, oh, they're lying to us. They keep leading us on. They keep moving the goalposts. Is that kind of similar to like the Overton window?
It's Overton window.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Dude, wow. Okay. Fucking A.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Once you start And I'll make all this stuff available. Like I basically built that that Facebook group just for this stream. So I had this in mind. So I'll put all this. I'm gonna start diving back into this. I'll put all the information there if people want to go. But hey, man, people don't. I mean, it's hard to get people to read stuff today. It's like it's that 2-second meme mentality, and that's you can't really convey this information with that 2-second meme mentality. You have to read, and hey, man, all the books are becoming digital, and what happens then? They're completely controlled or removed. 100%. Like Rage Against the Machine, Zach De La Rocha, and of course they're clearly part of the machine. It's but he had a good line, and I remember this back in 9th, 10th grade. We don't have to burn the books; we just remove them. Look at where we're at right now. Everything becomes digital. I mean, they're going to print books, but it's like if everything becomes digital, click. Hey, man, Shakespeare never existed, or Young, or whoever's dangerous to whoever's in charge. So let me go. I got a case study for 9/11. I got a case study for QAnon. I wanted to get the flat Earth, QAnon, from a psychological operations perspective, and I want to make it very clear because I don't want people like trying to hate on me. Well, they can hate on me. They've been doing that my whole life. I don't really care. I don't respond. Like, go ahead and hate on me, but I'm not approaching this. I'm not trying to put my like I said, dude. I'm a pragmatic. Like, I deal with what's in front of me. Like, I'm a very like. This is not an existential threat to me whether the Earth is round or flat. I don't give a shit, and I just want to explain it though from the lens of psyop, and and that's just the way it is, man. I got kids to feed, and I always made a funny joke about this. Like, when you get thrown into the gulag, are you going to be arguing about this topic? Probably not. And if you're not really paying attention to what's going on in front of you, guess what? I don't know, man. Things don't look so good. Maybe your belief in that particular theory might get you put into the gulag. Are you willing to go along with that? I mean, if you really believe it, I'm sure some people, and I want to say earlier, I'm not trying to minimize or talk condescending to people that coming from the psyop and propaganda perspective. Like, I'm a compassionate person, and I'm one of these people that's compassionate to fault. Now, if somebody, treats me a certain way, or, like I have a very short sort of, I have a very particular way of dealing with that, but I've always been about like helping people. I've always cared about people in general. I'm a people person, and so I don't look at people that like fall. Like, it's hard sometimes because it's easy to get into the you can't understand why. How can that person not know this? How could they fall for that? And I try really hard not to do that. I had 145 IQ friend who, this dude was fucking brilliant, and he was like, whenever we would talk, we developed a relationship because we would talk about high IQ shit like psyop and government, operations, and he had a background in finance, and he told me about what happened back when the bubble burst and how he had an insider, like a whole bunch of shit. And then this whole QAnon thing popped up, and I said, hey, man, like, dude, super brilliant. And he was like hook, line, and sinker. I'm like, wait a second, man, that's cool. I'm cool if that's what you believe, but let's have a discussion about this. And let me tell you about kind of where I'm coming from with this. And no. I'm like, wow. And I kind of saw the reaction from him, and I was like, oh, okay, this is something here to look into. So, but that being said, like, I don't look down or degrade people, or I don't condescend to people that, like, because you need to understand, like, there are very talented people that know how to manipulate. We know that. So I don't tend to look at somebody like, hey, man, if you believe in XYZ or you don't, well, you're just stupid, or you're just, whatever. Because I understand how easy it is to influence people. And I understand how the people that are doing it, they're very good at their job. And now it's going into AI and all these. So the best thing to do is try to present them with the information, give them the, the grammar, the definitions. Like, hey, if I tell you a list of fallacies and I say, hey man, that's an ad hom, that's a fallacy, or that's a circular argument, or that's whatever. If I show you what whys look like, you can detect them. So if we go over what these terms are, if I go over this case study for PSYOP, and I'm going to go into it right now, and I start, I'm sorry, for QAnon, I'm going to start dropping some a little bit of jazz in there, and it's like, hey, let me start showing you kind of what we're looking at from a different angle. Separate your emotion, and I'll try. Like I try. Like I'm cool if people want to believe that again. And I'm never gonna, if somebody becomes like arrogant or violent or, comes at me in a certain way because I don't, that's when we have problems. It's like, I'll let you believe what you want. And it's like, that's fine. But don't you, or if I don't know something and it's like, hey, how could you not know that? It's like, that's just basic, like how are you going to, like, if you know something that, like, first of all, if you have some information, you should probably share it to benefit humanity, as opposed to act like, hey man, I'm this cult of personality guy over here I have this, I have this secret knowledge, I have this secret information, join my group. Or if you don't know this, you're less than, or something like that. So that's not because I'm telling you, it's once you start to learn how easy it is to influence people, it's like how you have to have compassion, because it's like, so anyway, enough of my ranting. Let me get into this.
Yep. Get into it, man.
I'm sorry, say again?
We all have a vulnerability.
QAnon. So absolutely we do. And I have many. And so that's why I don't try to degrade people for theirs, because everyone does. So QAnon, here we go. QAnon. So you want to start with 9/11 or QAnon? 9/11, or so I'll probably go over 3 because of the time. Let me I want to do 9/11, QAnon, and the flat earth. I'm gonna go over it real quick, and then I want to go over a couple things with you, Leslie, about what you asked. So because I have to jump off here. So it emerged, and this is all the facts I got around this. This is me compiling information and trying to do analysis. Again, just doing an analysis. If you believe in QAnon, I don't care. Good for you. But let me give you some information from an analytical, psyop trained individual. So it emerged in 2017. It was an online phenomenon. It was described as a conspiracy theory, revolving around claims of global elite involved in a secret plot against former president. Okay, so global elite. So yeah, I mean, look, there's a global elite. We know that. That's part of that little limited hangout. We know there's global elite, right? But it's a global elite plot against the former president, as if they're global elite, do they really care about like he does? I mean, look at who the president is now, and like, just to be respectful, he's not running. He's not doing anything. He can't. Like, so what does that tell you about the position? It tells me that maybe it's not what we think it is. And the global elite, they're the global elite for a reason. And are they really that concerned about the president of the United States? I mean, what's he going to do? I don't know. I mean, this is former military speaking here too. It's like, but the movement rapidly gained followers, particularly in the United States. From a psyop and propaganda perspective, QAnon reveals deeper insights in how disinformation, social media manipulation, and psychological warfare tactics can influence public opinion, foster division, and mobilize action. So the beginnings, it began with an anonymous post on the image board 4chan. Now, I used to frequent 4chan because I know it was a good place. I know there's a lot of government interaction there. And I knew it. I was kind of interested to see when the COVID thing popped off. That's where I heard about it like 2 weeks before on 4chan. I read about it on 4chan 2 weeks before anything happened. And so you guys know what 4chan is? Yeah, it's a what you call a honeypot. It's they're disseminating, and this is where all this came from, Q&A. So all the information, the conspiracy, uh, the conspiracy, well, many conspiracies, they come from that. There's this thing called Fed posting, like people go on there and it's Leslie, it's a wild jungle. I would not recommend it. Anyway, so let me get back to this. The QAnon began with anonymous posts on the image board 4chan, so that's where it started, 4chan. Allegedly from a government insider with Q clearance. There's no such thing as Q clearance. I can tell you that for a fact. There's security clearances. There's no Q clearance. That doesn't exist. Michael Aquino had some very, very high level clearances, but it's not Q. There's no such thing as that. That's not real. Providing
what about
cryptic
above
message.
top secret, man?
Oh yeah.
And,
oh yeah. Yeah.
Was that a honeypot as well? That website, that forum?
4chan? Oh
No,
yeah.
above top secret.
Oh,
Like that's old school shit.
I
more or less,
vaguely,
right?
I vaguely remember that.
Right?
Probably.
Yeah, but
I mean, look, man, conspiracy sells, though. You know what I mean?
yeah, but not like it matters if it's a honeypot or not. But just the fact that you remember it is cool because that was something, and like it seemed like they wanted to talk about all the above top secret, unclassified.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
unclassified.
before Jones, it was Bill Cooper, and Bill Cooper. He said some interesting things. He was not a fan of Alex Jones. Not a fan at all. But he was killed. He was murdered by federal agents. And there's some things that he said that I can vet. And a guy like him, I'm gonna get sidetracked here, but honeypot is basically where you get like people go. It's a place to go where people kind of get stuck, so to speak. So unfortunately, like what you're talking about, it would be there's a lot of feds there disseminating information. There's a lot of talk about how certain individuals they're trying to influence certain individuals to do certain things. But essentially what it is, it's like, well, I'll tell you what the biggest honeypot in the world is, X. Because everything that goes on there, and I'm not even going to Elon Musk, but biggest defense contractor, allegedly. I think he's just a front man, but from a military perspective, he's X is a honeypot because everything that's being said on there or written on there is being cataloged and stored, and there's profiles being made up. This goes, and this is the cyber warfare stuff I was telling you about. There's stuff, I always told, dude, I see through this. I have this ability to kind of, I don't always know the details, but I'm like, there's something off about that. The way I start to click into like how groups start to act or react to certain things. I'm like, there's something off. I don't know what, I can't ever always place it, but I'm like, there's something off about that. It's like with the Aquino thing, I'm like, that dude's, that's not, he's not this, this doesn't add up. But like with the X thing, it's like, I see all these people in the right wing, they're going on there thinking they can just say whatever, saying really, really, they're cataloging these people and they're making databases of these people and what they said. And guess what? All the AI. So, hey, man, 10 years, 20 years from now, who knows? We don't know where we're going to be. But what you said, talking about like, making censorship and making certain, maybe it's not illegal. I mean, what was that movie where it was like they would arrest people beforehand? It was like Tom Cruise or whatever.
Minority Report.
Yeah. So AI, and they've talked about this, and let's not like most of what they say about AI is kind of a psyop too. It's like they're going into this whole demonic. It's like and most of the technology that we see as civilians, it's always 50 years ahead. I knew about like laser technology, back in the day. They call it directed energy, and it's not laser, called directed energy. And Lockheed Martin, I remember one time looking on their website, and there it is. They're just showing it. Now you look at her; it's laser tech. It's like back when I was a kid, dude. That was like sci-fi shit. And I'm like, if they're showing the public what they have, they got 50 years advanced, 100 years advanced at least. I mean, and that's just some stupid way to explain it. I mean, it's not like technically 100 or 50 years. You know what I mean? It's far more because, you know, it's crazy. And nanotech is where really what's scary. But okay, so let's talk about QAnon. Began with anonymous posts on 4chan. So the cryptic nature of Q's posts encouraged readers to do their own research, fostering a participatory element. And this should these case studies, Leslie, should really click with you because, you know, you work in the mental health field and, you know, I'm trying to make my way into the Jungian analytical psychology field. But the fostering a participatory element, you know, going back to the cult sort of idea. I'm not calling them a cult, but I'm saying like that sense of belonging, that sense of knowing something other people don't, that language, that symbology, you're part of a group. I mean, you know, QAnon, a lot of people that criticize QAnon don't realize they're actually quite literally, you know, they're participating in similar sort of structures. But it's just not like, you know, maybe not called that or something, you know what I mean? It's anyway, so the cryptic nature of Q's posts encourage readers to do their own research, fostering participatory event tactic to use the illusion of insider knowledge, creating an empowered group of individuals believing they were uncovering hidden truths. Always a little bit, always a little something. Oh no, you know, there's some crazy thing they used to say. The cryptic, okay, let's see here. So the psychological appeal. So this is where you might find interesting, Leslie. It's a QAnon drew on themes common in other conspiracy theories, secret cabals, and the terminology is very important to listen to because when you start seeing people use terminology, you know, as a psyop, somebody with psyop background, when I start seeing people use a sort of vernacular, an established language, then I'm starting to look at that in a different way. So I'm like, okay, that's, you know, gangs, you know, it's very basic psychology and group
deep
sociology.
state. When prior to like 2015, when have you heard the word deep state really? You know,
Absolutely.
Like,
and then like, well, here's another one. It was the Great Reset. And well, there was two different versions of that. You had like what's the dude's name? Well, you had Klaus Schwab, but then you also had what's the other guy called? The guy out there, he was the Mormon, Glenn Beck. He wrote this thing too. And it's like, so I heard people talk. He wrote a book titled Great Reset. And I'm like, the people that were talking, like Glenn Beck fans talking about Great Reset, they weren't talking about like what Klaus Schwab was talking about. And I'm like, this is odd. And then I realized that, oh, this might be, you know, to kind of divert people away from like, you know, and Klaus Schwab, he's just somebody that's like, you know, he's a figure like Jacques Italy, or you know, he's just or you know, he's Aldous Huxley. Like he's like Aldous Huxley. Yeah. He's not really writing for like, he's right. You know, like Aldous Huxley, I think kind of with Brave New World, he wasn't predicting. He was companions with these elites, these people that
foreshadowing.
They really were able to influence the world. Sorry.
So like foreshadowing, but yeah, like planting seeds of, you know, not the best seeds of, you know, to, you know, seed, you know, like the zeitgeists and, you know, throw things in the lexicon and have these egregores or pendulums to swing in favor of, you know, what the fuck they're trying to roll out with these agendas that they've had in store for how fucking long? Like way too long. Right?
Well, I'm thinking like
it seems.
Well, absolutely. Aldous Huxley had more of an insight into what the planning was. And I think at some point in his life, you know, people don't really, you know, George Orwell, he kind of described the communist system. We saw it. Aldous Huxley, he's, I think, and I always say this, it's more of a blueprint for what we're kind of looking at. And I think that his blueprint was more of a warning because, like you said, these people plan, you know, who are these people? Well, I mean, We know who they are. There's all these different groups, Bilderberg, and there's actual legit conspiracy and actual like people coming together, like World Economic Forum, who are making plans for the movement of all people, and that's a conspiracy. And it's like, it's anyway. Let me get back to this. So, QAnon is psyop and propaganda campaign, mimetic warfare. All right, so the QAnon effectively used memes, viral images. Here we go with memes, short form content to spread its message across platforms like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. The memes simplify complex ideas into digestible, emotionally charged messages that were easily shareable. This created a sense of camaraderie among followers. Again, going back to sort of the cult-like, psychology and sociology influence, and allowed for rapid dissemination of content. So memes appeal to they appeal to the emotions rather than logic. Hearts and minds. You can go either way, right? Let's see, the disinformation and misinformation. So the posts were combined real world events, and this is where they really catch people. This is the limited hangout thing where they drip a little bit of truth. QAnon posts often combine real world events with outlandish claims, blending fact and fiction to create plausible narratives. Deniable plausibility. That's what really gets people. This manipulation of information made it difficult for individuals to discern the truth. Again, you have to have compassion if that's the case. If these people are being manipulated, which, I mean, from my view, they are.
Do you have an answer to why the whole QAnon thing was rolled out to begin with? Like, what was their main goal behind the whole QAnon thing?
To make a man a god, like to set up
Was it to have a savior complex for? Yeah.
That's what I wonder.
I'm not sure yet. I know General Flynn was involved, and he's a former intelligence guy, and he's still out there pumping it. And I think what I think it really is. It's a pressure relief valve. I think you have a lot of veterans in this country, a lot of war-hardened people, a lot of men that know how to do war. This leads up to January 7th, which was a false flag. There were actual. I need to be careful what I'm saying. From my view, I saw legitimate dissent and legitimate. I saw legitimate. Like I saw it. We all saw the image of the Capitol Police opening the gate and telling them to come on. I mean, this is the problem with the internet with these people. We have videos like that, and their narratives don't work because you have real-time footage of what's happening. Just like with the pet thing, and in Springfield, it's like people are posting things on Telegram in real time. So you have the politicians up there saying, "Oh no, this is not it." And hey, man, these people are brought here. They're probably hungry. They probably don't have nothing to eat. I mean, I'm not justifying them eating your pet, but I mean, this is where the divide and conquer, the enemy image thing happens. They are. I've seen it, and it's not deep fake. It's like, and it's. I think that the QAnon was to pressure relief valve. I think that there's a real threat with because America has been used as the, if you ever read War is a Racket and Confessions of an Economic Hitman, me being prior service military, I look at War is a Racket. Smedley Butler was a 4-star Marine Corps general. He was back in those days, 1900s. He was probably one of the toughest men. I mean, even my grandfather. I mean, that dude he grew up during the Depression. I mean, he he grew up hard. And those men, I mean, they don't take shit, man. It ain't like, he wrote a book. Have you ever read War is a Racket? So they sent him down to like
Confessions. Yeah.
The Latin America was basically America's backyard in terms of like spreading democracy. So that was the term, spreading democracy, which really meant if you read War is a Racket and then combine it with Confessions of Economic Hitman, it kind of spelled it out. And Jay Dyer and Richard Grove, they talk a lot about how the left-right or the communist, capitalist sort of paradigm is not You know, it's financed by the same people. You know, Wall Street finance, the Bolsheviks, and all that. And so what happened was Smelly Butler, the four-star Marine Corps general, he was a Marine, and those people generally like they love the Marine Corps. And it's like he was upset because he saw that the Marine Corps was being used to go and do war on the behalf of corporations, international corporate Chiquita. But back in the day, like they were, back in the day, the Latin American theater, we call them theaters, and it's basically where you're doing military operations. Like, they were all over the place down there, and it was like, establish a, go in there, take out the democratically elected, leader, install our guy that will allow American corporations to go in there and extract resources. And then when he becomes a problem, we'll remove him. That's spreading democracy in a capitalist sense. Now the communists, they did it in a different way. And like I said, go check out Richard Grover. Like Jay Dyer does some good work on that. I'm trying to think of who else, but it's a whole stupid paradigm. And it's like, read Anthony Sutton, Bolsheviks in Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution. And then he has some great books. But anyway, let me try to. I'm sorry, guys. Let me try to finish this up.
Perkins, that's the author of the Confessions of Economic, right? Perkins. Yeah. If you read the two together, you can get both those books free on Archive, again, digital. Oh, yeah. And I don't know if you've just seen this, but Archive was facing a lawsuit, so they were talking about like they're going to shut them down, man. So anyway, the aim was to erode trust in traditional sources of information, such as mainstream media, politicians, government institutions. Okay, so this sounds counterintuitive to us because we don't have trust in all that. But you have to, if America is going, if there's a plan for America is to undergo a massive downgrade or decline, like if and this is kind of like. I tend to believe that these types of things are planned out. Like, I don't believe in this idea, well, that's free market. And it's like, oh, if you can just, no, it's, if that's the case, and I tend to believe that I think they're intentionally trying to move the United States in a particular direction, maybe because the resources here, they're moving towards China, Africa, tons of resources there. America. What do we have here? We don't have many, there's not a lot of, you see the capital being extracted at a very rapid pace. And then what happens after that? Well, I'll tell you what happens after that. Prison Planet. You have a bunch of, I see it like with the January 6th thing. That was a culmination of QAnon. And what I watched was not an insurgency because there were no weapons. I know what an insurgency is. Was that the word they used? They say insurgency. Like they were gaslighting everybody with the terminology. That was not accurate. I watched many different angles. I seen people that were legit protesting, but that whole scenario, it was like that right there. There was actors. That was that would be a false flag. Yeah. But it would be the type of false flag that there were, there was legit like people upset. And if I tied QAnon into that as being the culmination, I think QAnon kind of, to me, it just seemed like it like that, everything kind of fit in a certain way to where that was leading up to that. And what that was trying to show people was, one, your vote doesn't matter. Because that was the main point. I'm not saying if that's true or not. I'm saying that from there, I'm coming from their narrative. The narrative they portrayed was the vote was stolen and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm not saying whether it was or not. I'm just saying that's the narrative they portrayed. And oh, look, he's a threat to democracy and all this and that. And oh, look, January 6th. And it's like, when people realize that their vote really doesn't matter, what do you think is going to happen? Like something like January 6th or a real, like, you know what I mean? So it's a pressure relief valve. It's like, it's in my view, there was
there's an immense amount of like sort of bottled, there's a large amount of, things aren't the way they were, that meme ever since, I guess, 9/11, the world that you grew up in doesn't exist anymore. Well, look, man, every time I go to the store today, I'm spending 20, I could see it myself. Like everything, our money has less and less value. You go, so if the long-term situation is that there's going to be a civilizational decline in the American empire, there has to be, there's an awareness that there's going to be a certain amount of dealing with people that know how to do war that are very, very fucking angry, because everything they've been told, maybe wasn't true. That's what I'm saying. Like if you go read General Smedley Butler, if a 4-star Marine Corps general can say what he said, you're not going to get any more patriotic, gung-ho. There ain't nobody that ever exists. That dude was the reason why he spent his whole life building up his career and ruined it because he believed so much in the Marine Corps, and he couldn't stand seeing his Marines being sent down to Central America, being, doing war and dying on the behalf of like Chiquita or, some kind of corporation. He said, that's not what we're here for. We're supposed to be, you could argue whether or not, I'm not arguing legitimacy of, military use or whatever. I'm just saying that was the argument. So there's a lot of people, there's a lot of steam that's being built up because jobs aren't there, pay's not there, quality of life's not there. I mean, we all seen it. I mean, since I've been there. I mean, and then what? It's like, and all we're seeing is just this massive, just divide and conquer. It's the migration issue, and it's like, people start looking around. They're like, oh, hey, well, we need more people because we have to fill these jobs. But it's like, well, I know people that can't get jobs. So, and then if somebody like Trump is talking about this in the way that he does, because he's already framed as being the enemy image, well, now it's like if you talk about this and if like you really have real issues to talk about, like these are issues like, hey, man, look, stop with the name calling. Like, hey, don't call me XYZ because I'm pointing out that, there's this, groups of people that are being brought into, this geography. And I understand a lot of people don't believe in, geographical lines and all that, but it's like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking like, I know people, I've known people, I have cousins in Southern Mexico. There are NGO, I know about the NGOs down there. Like if they're getting money, it's almost laundered money getting pumped in, taxpayer. And so the government's basically paying these NGOs, and their whole business is to bring people up here. And these people, the narrative, the psyop narrative about that is that these people are refugees. Some people are, right? But here's the thing about it. If you're bringing people from Haiti who came from clearly Haiti's one of the probably most, if you're going to talk about refugees, like there's crazy stuff going there. How do you integrate those people? Why are those people eating people's pets? Maybe it's because they're hungry, right? So what's going on here? So when I look at the migration issue, I'm like, I'll open my door to anybody. And I have. What I'm seeing though, from a psyop perspective, is this is weaponized migration, and it's on a worldwide scale. And it's like, and guess what? The oligarchs, not the president, not the politicians, the oligarchs, the people like we're talking about, the Venetians, behind the scenes, Klaus Schwab's kind of like a front man. He's one of many. He's, we know about him, so he's not that important, I'd say. But this is what the overall plan is. Because what I'm looking at, when you start to see patterns, like a lot of people don't understand that, like the migration thing's happening all over the West. It's not just happening here. It's happening in Australia, France, Italy. And it's like, look, man, I pay attention to world conflicts. There ain't conflicts going on in all these places. So they're not, and it's like Africa's full of resources and nobody wants to go there and develop it. Why is that? That doesn't make any sense. Well, the Chinese are, and America's not. Why is that? I thought we were, Mr. Capital or Mr. Money Bags, Monopoly Capital. That don't sound like a free market. Why aren't we, let's go there. Let's help develop their infrastructure. Because it's not what it is. It's what we're told. Everything you're told in the media, everything, whatever the narrative is, it's all fabricated, and it's like, and I got neighbors actually that are from Rwanda. When I grew up, I remember seeing that. I was horrified by the genocide, because I paid attention to that shit. And I was like in 10th grade, and I've basically become like family to them because when they moved here, they were brought here by NGOs. I found all this out because I talked to people. People tell me stuff, so I find out what happened. It's like there's NGOs that brought them here, whether religious or faith-based, and there's all sorts of them. I mean, it runs the gamut. It doesn't have to be religious. And I'm like, so I found out the story. It's like they were giving them money to come here. Like they're over there in country, and a lot of these people think they're doing really, oftentimes they are. They're like really trying to help people, but they're being manipulated, by, where's that money coming from? And it's not just a left-right thing. That's so stupid. It's not that at all. I mean, people try to make sense of things in that way, but the thing is that like they're, from a psyop perspective, what I'm watching and what I'm seeing and how I'm seeing it explained and how I'm seeing people react, that's kind of where I get my, that's generally why I have a different point of view on these things. Cause I'm like, I'm looking at all these things, and I'm pretty keen at that, but anyway, so guys, I'm sorry. Let me try to get through this real quick. And then I'm going to have to go in about 10 minutes. I'll give you till 15 after. And I really want to, Leslie, I really want to go into the question you had here, but so I'll drop
I'm curious in flat Earth if you can spend a few minutes on
absolutely.
that. People are really
I'll hit that.
interested.
And we're just going to have to do a follow-up since I screwed up the timing on this.
No
and
worries.
I apologize for that.
You proposed a part 2, and
Yeah, we could definitely do a follow-up. It's worth it.
This is a monumental topic. Like I said, it's like it's and then cybersecurity. I haven't even touched that, but
that was going to be more of the focus, and the cybernetics and all the
it's
digitization
let me
and
see.
the TikTokification that we've kind of covered a little bit. It'd be cool to get that unfortunate psyoptic logic behind it all to get understand things that people can. I mean, I guess the point is, it's not just like doom and gloom with all these things. Like the more we understand these things and identify them, the more
that's my
cast aside, these like ego attachments to, what it is we're so like involved in with, the research and all this stuff. Hey, I've spent over a decade of research. I'm willing to accept hey, I might have spent a couple years looking at things and thinking, certain things were right, but they could have been wrong.
It's part of growth.
Gotta adjust and whatever, right? So
it's part of growth, man. And if you can't admit
just it's never ending.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if you can't admit that you're wrong, then you're not actually growing.
Well, I think you're helping us to learn how to think differently too, and look at things a little more objectively.
I get on these rants and I get sidetracked. I'm ADHD big time. Derek knows that. Derek was like, "Hey man, stop blowing up my inbox, bro," because I'm working at night. And I'm bored. And
you come at an anti-social.
When I start going, man, it's like, we've been friends for a good time. Derek's a great dude, and I hope to see him. I'm coming to Europe here in 2025, so. Hey man, I get direct flights to Paris from CBG. That's the closest airport. So let me do flat Earth, and I have to get out of here, and we'll follow up with this later. And I hope I didn't talk your freaking ear off. And I hope I kind of got sidetracked, and I try not to put too much of my opinion in there. I was trying to give you a good idea of psyop angle, but anyway. So I apologize for that. Didn't get much sleep, so there you go. I tend to do that. So flat Earth.
Thank you. Yeah.
Flat Earth movement psyop case study. So the Flat Earth movement, and by the way, let me again preface this with, I don't care if you believe in Flat Earth or not. It's not important to me, and maybe you think I'm ridiculous because it's like your hill to die on. I don't give a fuck about that either. You believe what you want to believe. I'm not talking to you guys. I'm addressing whoever's watching this. I'm giving you a a non-biased, like I have my own belief about it. I'm not going to tell you what it is because, you know, it's not even that important to me anyway. So like I said, I deal with what's in front of me and that's it. You know, my target stays downrange. You know what I mean? This ain't this, you know, if I'm sitting in a gulag one day, maybe we'll talk about it. I don't know. We'll have time, I guess. To me, it doesn't really matter to me. It's not important. But anyway, the flat earth movement it's reemerged in modern era, gaining traction through social media and outline platforms. The historical context and disinformation. And I'm not even going to go into like the science. This is not if or isn't true. Okay. I just want to reiterate that again. Totally analytical, psychological angle, psychological psyop angle. So the historical precedents where disinformation has been used by intelligence agencies to confuse and destabilize populations. Operation Mockingbird, which I printed that out for you guys too. We're not going to get to that. Potential for psyop tactics. Here's you gotta listen up. The flat earth theory may serve a similar role, distracting from critical issues. And what I said about that's not an existential threat to me. So the flat earth theory, and this is psyop, potential for psyop tactics. Okay. Flat earth theory may serve a similar role, distracting from critical issues. So people that focus on this issue, they tend to really focus on this issue and they become very passionate about it. Have you noticed that? And it's such an issue. And I've always thought to myself, like, you know, why? Like, okay, cool. You believe in that. Let's carry on now. You know, we can be friends. I don't care. Like, that doesn't matter to me. Let's go take care of this major problem we're facing right now. We'll talk about that when we're sitting around drinking a beer, and it's like, who gives, you know, anyway. So the flat earth theory may serve a similar role, distracting from critical issues, fostering division, eroding public trust in scientific and government institutions. Now, we don't really have big faith in government institutions, mostly, rightfully so. But science is still science. I mean, it's like people don't believe in science, period, just because it's been taken over by, you know, big corporations. But I mean, it's a method. It's not a noun, like I said before. And they're not teaching people the method. They're teaching people the fucking noun, and nobody knows about science. So, the psychological manipulation techniques. Let's see here. So, the cognitive bias. So, the movement leverages cognitive bias, such as confirmation bias. Followers seek information that reinforces their beliefs. So, if everybody's agreeing with you about everything, you know, that could present a problem, right? No one's going to tell you that, you know, like, hey, that's not true. They're just going to, it's kind of like an echo chamber effect too. So Dunning-Kruger effect. So overconfidence in understanding complex scientific topics. You've seen people like do flips trying to explain this stuff. And it's emotional engagement. The movement provides followers with a sense of belonging and empowerment using forbidden knowledge, much like QAnon, to create a group dynamic. Very important. These tactics mirror psyop strategies by engaging emotions and manipulating perceptions to build loyalty and deeper belief. So the digital amplification in social media. So weaponized algorithms, social media platforms like YouTube and Facebook use algorithms that prioritize engaging, often controversial content, leading to the movement's rapid spread. There was a thing when it first came out too, like it seemed like they were using that flat earth as a censorship model, because they're like, hey, this is misinformation, so we're going to use this as a springboard to start censoring other real conspiracies. I remember reading something about that. I kind of had that thought before, like flat earth was a springboard to start censoring like legit conspiracies, because there are legit conspiracies, right? You know, everybody knows Kennedy was assassinated. That's a conspiracy. You know, we all know that we were told about it. You know, 9/11, you know. So anyway, echo chambers. So followers are often isolated in digital echo chambers where they only encounter reinforcing ideas. That's dangerous, which deepens their belief and isolates them from scientific counterpoints. Psyop parallels. This tactic reflects the goal of controlling narratives within certain groups seen in other psychological operations. So the erosion of trust in institutions, undermining authority. Like I said, Carl Jung's an authority on psychology. I don't want to undermine Carl Jung. If I can find a way to prove him wrong or disagree with him, that's fine. But I'm not trying to undermine. I'm not saying he's not an authority, right? And that's an easy example. The movement in and what we're seeing now is that people have no trust in science, period, which is like idiocracy, because science is
folks can say like, hey,
what
there's
they call
a
that
niche psychology, there's a Jungian psychology, but he's not the author of psychology. Would that be more better?
but he's an yeah, no, I mean, like, but he's an authority figure. No, I mean, you're right.
It's like an
What
author
I'm
is like
kind
an
of getting
author
at is
of
that,
book type of thing, you know what I mean? And he wrote a couple of
I mean, he's an authority figure. Like, people will just reject somebody based upon like this idea of authority. Like, you know what I mean? Just like, hey, I'm going to reject Jung because he's an authority, meaning he's well established. You know, he's an authority because his work is relevant and it's profound and it's useful and it's been proven out. It's like just me just saying, hey man, I reject Jung on the basis because he's an authority. That doesn't make any sense. It's a fallacy. That doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
so
no
what this whole thing is, doing is it's like making people not believe in science, period. Like it's, you know what I mean? Because science is an authority. So it's like, we can't, so, let me go back here. Echo chambers. So,
yeah.
I'm getting tired, guys.
This is a question I wanted to, ask you also, because, like, yeah, there could be like psyops on top of psyops or whatever people want to paint it. But, like, can you see the comment in the screen right now?
No.
Just because it's a psyop doesn't mean it's not true.
No one said that. Who said that? I didn't say that.
Yeah, no, it's one of the people that's listening who's commenting.
No, yeah, nobody said that. Psyop can be true or false. I mean, that's not even. I mean, I don't know. I mean, well, yeah, I mean, that's just it's fundamental nature of that's part. Like, if I want to be like the limited hangout that I explained earlier, that is about sprinkling a little bit of truth to cover a bigger lie. So yeah, so in that sense, yeah, of course, the truth, yeah, it's absolutely that's limited hangout. That's what that was. So there's probably some other terms for that too, but let me get through this, guys. I'm sorry for ranting all day here.
Where is you? Yeah.
So digital amplification of social media. So weaponized algorithms, social media platforms. So we went over that. So erosion of trust. We got that. Strategic mistrust. The broader effect of such movements is the fragmentation of public opinion. The fragmentation of public. That's really important. That's what we see, the division, the divisive. That's something I always cued in on was the divisiveness that's flat Earth. I always noticed the divisiveness that it created, and I was like, yeah, that when I see something like that, I pay attention to it. Like that's something. There's something going on there. Not that normal arguments, not normal, of course it is, but it has a different nature to it, and it's pretty clear, and people want to fight over it. There's probably been fights over this, fist fights. Erosion of societal trust, which wouldn't make any sense at all. But key goals of disinformation campaigns: comparison to real world psyops, Operation Mockingbird. So I'm comparing. Let me go forward here with this. I had some. Let's see here. I don't know if I printed out. Okay, I had a bunch of stuff on this. Okay, let me go back to the notes part of this. So
it's all good. You only got like a minute apparently.
The movement.
Yeah,
I know, dude.
It's all
flat
on
Earth.
you, man.
I'm gonna
chilling.
Yeah, yeah. So flat Earth movement has resurfaced in the digital age through social media. Okay, let's see. So this is the historical context was the ancient belief largely debunked by modern science. I'm giving you the official narrative. I'm not saying that's what I'm not taking a side here. Digital resurgence through online communities and social media platforms gain traction, not by new evidence. I mean, we've seen guys, but by leveraging digital ecosystem. That's a biased sort of take on it, but So key psyop tactic. Here's the important part: echo chamber amplification, which followers are isolated Followers are isolated in online echo chambers, reinforcing their beliefs. So, people that don't want to hang out with anyone or talk with anyone, or unfriend people for not agreeing. That we see that quite a bit. Misinformation about science and astronomy spreads. Disinformation campaign. Sorry. Misinformation about science and astronomy spreads, fostering distrust of scientific institutions. NASA. Nobody believes in NASA. Everyone thinks and it might be a money laundering scheme, But does anyone have any proof of that? I hear a lot of people saying that, but can anyone, is that a psyop? Maybe. Sorry about that. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. I don't even want to go into the moon landing. It's like, I don't have an opinion on that at this moment, and I don't have anything on that. So,
as far as I'm concerned, they make
disinformation campaign.
Too much public funds.
Well, it's like,
fuck. But yeah, go for it. That's how I feel.
Absolutely. Yeah, it probably is it probably is going to like black operations, like CIA type stuff and who knows what. But big lie technique. The theory challenges accepted reality, drawing attention through its sheer boldness. Now, when we say accepted reality, the Greeks, this is pretty well established by the Greeks. It's not like the idea of the world being like, there are old maps, but it's like it's been established through a long period of time that this is what we're looking at. So, again, that's the way it is. And it's like, I'm not saying it's, I'm not trying to argue. I'm just saying in this particular circumstance, the big lie technique, if we're looking at it from the very analytical standpoint, it'd be the big lie technique because it's a big lie. And, people are going to get mad and say, well, no, it's not, it's real. But I'm telling you what it would be considered. Perception management offers simple, easy to understand explanations for complex scientific phenomena. Like, Leslie, people can't talk about your field, just because they read some articles, right? That's a complex field, right? You have to really put a lot of time. It's like, so why do people think they can talk about astronomy? Like, yeah. Or, advanced mathematics, for God's sake. I'm not going to, you understand what I mean? It's like, so they listen to somebody who is talking about it. Well, they listen to people who are talking about it, who don't have any justification for talking. They're not mathematicians. The science and math, they're not real. So scientists and mathematicians discredit them. You see what I mean? So the authorities, there are like legit mathematicians that can, legit do math and do science. And it's like, so anyway, so Frames Flat Earth believes, the framing is flat Earth believers as truth seekers fighting against a corrupt global conspiracy. Followers feel empowered and part of an enlightened community. Again, secret information, occult information. Psychological manipulation, cognitive biases. Relies on confirmation bias, seeking info that aligns with pre-existing beliefs. And the Dunning-Kruger effect, overestimating your own knowledge. So followers feel validated by the movement's simple explanations, which emotional appeal bends a sense of community and identity. And this is really why, like I said, I don't get down on people that believe things that I don't necessarily think make sense. It's because there's there's a sense of gotta have compassion. Not like, hey man, these people, they're so ridiculous, they're believing this, and I need to feel bad for them. It's like, no, I just know. I'm kind of looking at it from the point of view of these people have been manipulated. And, even if it's true or not, they're still being manipulated. Like, it doesn't, like, the whole point of if or isn't is it's like, totally irrelevant. It's like you're being manipulated, and you're acting in a particular way as a result. And it's like, it seems like that's exactly what the outcome was,
it's on both sides. The manipulation is on both sides, though, right? Because the round earthers reacting to the flat earthers, so they're both sides are participating in the psyop, or in the result.
Well, and the thing is too, though. So if exactly, and it's like, and so in this let's say we really have science that can really tell us that it is round, that is no longer relevant. So nothing is real. So it's undermining like we were saying before, like what Derek was talking about, like any trust in authorities or institutions, because they're all bad, they're all government, it's like no, Carl Jung's not government, he's not he's not a oligarch. He's an institution though, because of the nature of his work. And that doesn't mean that everything he said is correct. It just means that a lot of what he said is correct, and he made findings that were altered the whole face of psychology. And so there are scientists that are able to do that as well. Pythagoras. I mean, but every single scientist, like everything is being questioned, is what I'm saying. Like, this is how I feel it really goes. You can't, going back to what we were saying, Derek, it's like you can't have any belief in anything. Nothing's real. Everything's subjective. There is no truth. And and it's like science isn't real. And if you understand, like, again, it's not even about one or the other. It's just looking at it from, it's like, well, now people don't believe in what do people believe in besides that? Well, everything's a conspiracy. Everything's a psyop. No, it's
well,
not.
I think there are people who believe in the scientific method and trust science, but they don't trust the institutions anymore. So it's taken away,
Exactly. Yeah.
People's trust
Absolutely.
in anything that NASA says. Or whatever.
That's why I like to say it's a. That's why I like to say it's a noun. I'm sorry, it's a verb, not a noun, because it kind of separates that. It makes that ambiguity clear. It's it's not the trademarked science that we see, and they're rightfully so. I mean, it's it's a whole different thing. But folks, I have to go. I'm sorry, and I enjoyed my time, and thanks for having me. And hopefully, I didn't rant too much. And
no, you did great. It was super interesting. Really curious and interested to have more of your insights.
I didn't stay on point. I didn't really sleep much, and so I'm over with my ADHDs. Like, so next time I'll make sure I get plenty of sleep and be prepared better. I mean, I have my notes prepared, but I I totally dropped the ball on the in other ways. But we made it happen. So
yeah, we're
gonna let me come back and
sorry, go for
sorry,
it.
man. There's a lag. My bad.
I was just gonna say, we gotta conclude this and kind of bring it back to how we can bridge these gaps of all the potholes of the pathwork of trying to properly be on the road direction of truth. So like there's too much infighting, so we're gonna be hopefully being able to
divide and conquer.
Yeah.
Divide and conquer, and like there is if everyone's arguing amongst themselves, there's no consensus, and there's no consensus, there's no opposition, and if there's no opposition, so I mean, but anyway, I have all this. I have so much to go through, and we'll try to get over that. So anyway, we'll reschedule and take it from where we left off.
Looking forward to that. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and keep an eye on our Dissolving the Divide channel, because we'll have more good stuff.
And don't send your hate about Flat Earth or QAnon to me, because I don't care.
Nor us.
I still love you. So, I love you guys. All right. Yeah, I'm not talking down to you. I'm just trying to give you some information to maybe help maybe you'll, I don't know. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just telling you, there's these particular tactics and people that employ these things behind the scenes in the shadows that you're not really too aware of. And they're not the people that you think they are, like the cabals. And there are those, but not what, not exactly how they think so. So anyway, it's been fun. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Enjoyed it very much. We'll catch you later.
My mouth is really dry, so I'm gonna go get some gum. It's
we'll
terrible.
catch you later.
Bye bye. Take care.
Bye.
Au revoir. Adios. Au revoir.